Flex Lewis here, straight out of the Lair. What's up, guys? We're back, episode 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, straight out of the Lair. It's great to be back, and obviously, you guys have spoken. You love kind of this style of podcast between myself and my wife. So here we are. This is going to be, I guess, a continued theme.
Yes. So this week, we're actually going to talk about mindset with you and how you got involved in business and the entrepreneurial kind of lifestyle. So I'm going to throw it at you this time and say, how did you, what's your first business you got into, or your first taste of having to work and make some money?
Oh, we're jumping right in.
Yeah, we're jumping right in.
2 feet in the deep end.
Yeah.
So from a very young age, I know obviously I'm telling my wife the story of all you guys. Obviously I come from very humble beginnings. Country of Wales. My dad was in steel factory for
42 years, I think.
Yeah, 42 years. My grandfather, who just passed away, that's why I was back in the UK, for everybody who's seen me in the UK, he was a miner for a number of years. So that blue-collar mentality was built into me in the small little town I was in. And there was very kind of little options for me in terms of what I could do. You know, you either fell into working in one of them type jobs, steel factory. You worked in, the mines had closed down at that point in time. It was just too dangerous. But you either found yourself going into the army, the military then in any sense of form, or the RAF or the Navy. Obviously, I played rugby, and that's the other option out. You play professional sports. So in college...
wait. You have to start back.
Oh, you want to go right back?
You had...
Oh, you want to go right back?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Wow. So from a very young age then,
Yes.
I knew that because of, obviously, my upbringing, I soon realized as a kid, you want everything, right? Mommy, I want this, you want that. And I realized very soon enough at a very young age that, you know, I wasn't going to get whatever I asked for. My mum and dad provided us kids, all us brothers, with an amazing upbringing. I came from a very loved house, but in terms of material stuff, you know, it just wasn't that, right?
Right.
You know, I never went without. Just to preface that, Christmas, as you know, was an amazing time. But in terms of me wanting something, I had to really save for it. So from a very young age, I knew that I really had to save for stuff, you know, make some money.
Right.
So I started off my first ever entrepreneurial, you know, I'd say venture was paper round. Mm-hmm. So I had my first paper round at 12 years old, and maybe younger than that. And obviously there's a duration of time that you're a paper boy.
Right.
So I knew that these guys that I was doing these lapping paper round routes on were coming to the end. So I got friendly with them, and I said to them, when you finish, guys, I want that round. So what I done was I took their round, then I sold it to another kid, and I took a cut every single week from these kids because the paper rounds were very sought after. So I had a very tough route. It was up a lot of hills. It was actually where I lived, as you know.
What time did you have to start? Like, what time did you have to wake up?
Before school, every morning, rain or shine, which there's never shine, as you know.
Yeah, it's rain.
So I would always have to get going very early, get out the door, and it taught me a lot of responsibility too, because this is now me. Everything was on me, you know. Right. I had to deliver this paper, and I had to make sure that the paper was intact. And, you know, Welsh weather is severe. So making sure that these papers got there in perfect form. But anyway, without going into that bullshit, the mentality of business wasn't nothing that anybody taught me. I knew that for me to make money, I had to do these little things. So cutting this percentage off every route, you know, again, nobody told me this. It was just sort of
Logic
installed. Yeah, it was like, this is what I got to do. So every week I was kind of making a lot of money. Plus, once a week, or I believe it was a Thursday, you had to then go around later on in the evening and collect the money for the papers. So you had a big money bag.
Yeah.
A lot of responsibility for a young kid, right? Yeah. And you learned how to talk to customers. You learned how to work out change. Mm-hmm. And because I was kind of like that cheeky little charm too, and I talked to people, I would get tips. So not only was I making money from the route, I was making money on tips, and I was also taking a cut from these other routes that I had. And this went on for quite some time. And that money that I had at that age, I mean, it was a lot of money, you know. I was taking home probably, I don't know, 30, 40 pound.
So you just saved it though. It wasn't like, oh, I want to buy a skateboard. Like you just kind of just were just saving for whatever you did want.
Yeah, I saved. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I spent some stuff too, but I can't remember what I spent it on. But for the majority of stuff, I saved. And what I then got into was my first business venture, I would say. And I've obviously spoken about this, but for the fans who are not privy to my this topic,
or new fans,
I went to the local pet shop, which is in the market in my small town of Llanelli in Wales, and I purchased what would be called zebra finches, we call them in the US, and I knew male and female I was going to create, and next thing I had little chicks from these birds. My mother and father still didn't know I was doing this because my mother was like anti-pets in the house, in the shed. So I hid these birds in a self-made cage, and obviously my mother and father caught on to it in the end because I was like, why the hell is he spending so much time in the fucking shed? But the end, this little bird venture turned into quite a little empire in the end. I had about 100 birds, and I would breed these birds, and I would sell them back to the same pet shop that I originally got the first pair from.
What was your uncle, though? Was your uncle involved in it before you got involved?
My uncle,
where'd you get the idea of, like, I'm just going to go to a pet shop and buy a bird? Yes. That's not what I would buy at a pet shop.
Well, as you know, my grandfather was amazing with nature. So he would tell us all about what he used to get up to when he was a kid. And they used to, breed songbirds. They would create what's called mules, where you put a British bird, a songbird, like a goldfinch or a greenfinch, that sings unbelievably well. It's beautiful to hear, and they would cross it with a canary, and it's called a mule. So my grandfather used to do that when he was a kid, and then he'd sell that mule off as a songbird. So I hearing all these stories, and I'd go back to my mother and say, Mom, I want to do this. She's like, there's no bloody birds coming here. My mother's like, but of course, you know how I am too. So also my uncle used to have budgies when he was younger, and then later on in life, he picked up that hobby again, and now he's like one of the best champion breeders in Britain. He's one of the biggest breeders in that field. But again, he wasn't there when I was a young kid. But I did ask him for some advice, right? So I had people around me who were kind of there, and they had the magazines and they had the books, and I would read this stuff. But I didn't want to get into budgies. And at the time, they were just too expensive. So the finches was my first start. So when I realized that I was breeding these finches, and then I would sell them back to the pet shop for £1 each, and they were selling them for like £5. You're making a lot of money for a kid that's, 12 years old. Yeah. Breeding these birds, £1 each, and you're selling 20, 30 at a time. It adds up. And these zebra finches were, fucking hell, it was like Pornhub in there. They were just going to town all day long, all year round. There was no season. They would just go for it all year round. So there was a continual income stream coming in. So that money then I realized soon. And obviously my parents then caught on with this. You can't hide 100 birds in the shed, right? I invested that money into building cages. So obviously the story, twines into itself. But I was able to scale this bird breeding business that I had quite fast. So the money I made, I invested. So I didn't take a dollar out of it first. I invested. And that money all came from my first paper round. Right. The original money came in. So I learned young about investing into stuff and investing into the product, investing into longevity of stuff. So that was my first entrepreneurial investment kind of thing. So then I realized also that, wow.
You can make more money.
I can make more money. So there was something called parakeets. So I changed the bird setup, and then I invested into a couple of pairs of parakeets. And then I got into other things like kakarikis, and I started hand taming these kakarikis, where hand taming means where you literally spend time with these parrots. You teach them how to, get used to your hands. The parents see you coming in, they're okay. You can pick them up, and then they get used to the human hands and stuff like this. So then when you start to train them where they can stand on your finger, they can fly to your shoulder and stuff like that, it's a just expedited process. Yeah. So hand taming was a lot of money. So if I was to sell a parrot straight to a breeder, to
shop.
public sale or back to the pet shop, I would make more money if they were hand tamed.
Yeah.
So I started investing my time into hand taming these parrots.
How long did it take to hand tame?
Ooh, it's never ending, because you can also teach these birds how to talk.
Enough to sell to the public.
Oh, the whole process probably would take a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, like everything else, you have success and you also have failures. So for me, I took some wins and I took some losses. Some birds got sick and, but even though I was doing this with the purpose of making money, I really treated these birds and this venture, as a business, but the health of the birds came first. All my birds were beautiful looking. The plume, I invested into the best tonic waters and the seeds and stuff like that. It wasn't just, buying random shit. There was a lot of mindset that went into making sure the best thing was done for the bird's health.
So you went from that to then?
So then, this is where people don't know. This is the
interesting fact.
The turn of the tables. There was a neighbor of mine that had racing pigeons behind my house, and I would sit there in the garden and I would watch these birds just fly around, and they were fast. They were doing all kinds of maneuvers in the air, and then when this guy went out, he'd whistle with a little can of seed, he'd make and these birds were flying for fucking hours maybe, and as soon as he heard that noise, these birds would come in. I was like, Jesus, they're trained.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. So he was also one of my paper-owned customers. So on my collections, I went and asked, I said, do you mind if I come and see the bird shed? And this guy was kind of like, some of these bird breeders, they don't like strangers going in. Because the birds know you're not part of the familiar face. So he said, I actually race these birds. I was like, you race these birds?
Yeah.
How the hell does that work? So he explained to me, he said, come over on the weekend. Do not wear anything bright. Of course, I turn up with this fucking a luminous T-shirt. I was sent back to the house to put something darker on.
So you didn't listen?
I didn't listen. The story of my life. And then him and I became sort of friendly. Mm-hmm. And I would go over every weekend at a certain time in the morning. And we'd wait for the birds to come in. Of course, just waiting. You get talking. And we became, as I said, became friends. And then I thought to myself, wow, this is cool. I had the parrots and I was doing pretty well. The main light bulb that went off in my head was when I realized just how much money was in pigeon racing.
Yeah.
So when I found out there was a lot of money involved, of course, I went back to the house, started plotting my plan.
Yeah.
And I started changing my whole shed.
You started selling off what you had?
I started selling everything. And then I started really educating myself into the pigeon racing side of things. And there's a lot of... this is not your standard throw a bird up in the air and it comes home. And no, this is when I purchased the membership to get into this world. Somebody comes to your house, an official comes to your house, and they do longitude and latitude. So basically like a GPS satellite location. And then every Saturday you would take these birds to this club. They would, put everything through the system, and then they put this rubber thimble on their leg.
Yeah.
So when they release the birds, there's different categories of racing too. There's a short race, there's a medium race, and there's long distance. Mm-hmm. So the short races would be several hundred miles, which is a sprint. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't realize is, just like athletes, these pigeons have the different DNA. So, you look at somebody who's like Usain Bolt, right. And then you have, a long distance runner who would be somebody like, somebody from Ethiopia, a long distance champion.
Well, you could physically see the difference in their bodies. If they're sprinting,
muscle. There's different muscle. There's different muscles on the short and the long. Now, obviously, a lot of people only see these pigeons in local towns, and they call them flying rats.
Yeah.
If you was to put one of these flying rats, these pigeons that you see in a town that's around cities towns and cities, next to a racing pigeon, you could see the difference. The pigeons are literally jacked up. Yeah. So then I started kind of really getting into that. Mm-hmm. My first race, I think I came third, so I would be in this little pigeon club. And it's not little, by the way, because there's a lot of money involved.
You were probably the youngest.
I was the youngest by fucking 50 years.
Yeah.
But that wasn't to my advantage at first because they were like, "Oh my God, we need new blood coming in. You know, we've got to keep this
and there's
sport
no way
alive."
that he can come in and do any damage.
So yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and
they weren't threatened.
But what they didn't realize is, because of my age, and because of this very unique circumstance that happened, a stray bird came into my shed from Ireland, and there's this database where you can report a lost bird. Because this happens. It was a long distance race. A bird got lost. It came in, and I looked after it. And when the database came back, I reached out to this guy via call, because there was no fucking phones then, right? You called this number.
Your landline. Yeah.
And he was one of the best racers in the entire world. And he was shocked that I reached out, because once people find out you have a bird from a particular loft, that bird could be tens of thousands or even six figures. And he was like, I am so appreciative that you're reporting this to me. And I go, I'm so new in this. And he was like, oh, you don't know who I am? And I was like, no, I don't. Sorry, sir, etc. And he actually helped me with some real key information on how and what he does. So fast forward, I put a couple of my birds into the second race, and I fucking blitzed it. You should have seen everybody's faces in that Pigeon Club, and they were asking me questions. What did you do? How do you do it? So then, kind of like Arnold and Franco, I kind of give wrong advices. There's only one winner here, and that's going to be me. So, yeah, my birds were, all, in the end, they were supplementing too. You know, they were on tonics, B vitamins, and believe it or not, there's creatine also involved in pigeon racing. It's wild. There is. Check it out. Anyway, what I want you guys at home to do before I get into the whole pigeon fucking deep hole, because I can go very into a rabbit hole here. Pull out your phones and type in world's most expensive pigeon.
It's mind-blowing.
You soon realize why Flex Lewis was involved in that. And as most people also know, I'm not a sheep. I like to find these unique little ventures and business ventures and give it a go. But obviously, I done that to a certain period of time, because that bird hobby of mine then was replaced by the other bird that I was chasing, the birds that I was chasing.
So how old were you when you stopped the pigeon racing?
I think I was just before college, something like
16.
that. Yeah, because I'd done it for a couple of years.
Okay.
Obviously, I didn't broadcast this thing. I was doing it and having some fun, and obviously I was a rugby boy, right? So the boys knew. But what I also done was, and again, I want to kind of touch on this and then go full circle. I linked up with a couple of long-haul transportation guys in my town. So I would get my birds to train them, and this is what you do. You train them in a route.
Yeah.
So you can't just take these birds all the way up north, because that's not the distance they fly. They fly on GPS, and that's the incredible thing about these birds. They pick up on landmarks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of theories and stuff, and nothing's been kind of proven, but these birds have the unbelievable GPS system. This is why they were used in World War I and World War II to deliver messages in the war. And so my grandfather had pigeons also. He had racers, he had tipplers and tumblers. They have these competitions where they throw these birds up and they'll fly for tens of hours. They're like little dots in the sky. They go circle, circle, and then they'll come down after a certain period of time, and then the longest ones win the prize. And then the other ones are tumblers, where they do all kinds of tricks in the air. And that's what Mike Tyson has. He has the ones that do all the tricks. So going back to it,
your friends had the trucks.
I had my friends in the trucks. So what I do is I'd found the route that they were going, and I would give these guys little £5 or whatever, and they would take them up to a certain point, and then they would release the birds, and then they bring my basket back when they return back with the these big huge lorries or 18-wheelers, whatever you call them. Yeah. So my birds were very well trained, very well looked after. They were treated like athletes, and I was taught from, I didn't realize, but I was soon finding out now, looking back, that was such a commitment to do,
and a responsibility.
A big responsibility, feed in,
keep them alive, you know what I mean? There's a whole level to this.
And also I was there to win. So
money management. Yeah. I mean.
And you could bet on your birds too. So there's a lot of money that was going around and changing, horse racing and greyhound racing and stuff is obviously big in the UK. Yeah. And then obviously the pigeon racing too is kind of the smaller scale, but it was still done by a lot of these guys. So I done that for a little bit, and I done well. But my brother had asthma, and the plume that was coming off the birds were going on to the claws. So my brother was suffering with asthma, so I kind of had to get rid of them.
Got it.
So not to say that I would have done it for any much longer. I kind of, how I am. I'll go into something 110%, and then I find out if I want to do it anymore, and then I'll, I love to jump into hobbies and just do it, and then I've done it. You know. So then moving on from that, in college, I was in college for 2 years, and speaking to my dad, he was saying, there's no such thing as a job for life. He was promised there was a job for life because he was
steel.
Yes, he was in steel, but then he was an what the hell do you call it? An apprentice.
Oh yeah.
So he started off as an apprentice, worked his way through, the ladder to the top, but then hit the glass ceiling. There's nowhere else to go. So I see my dad just busting his ass every single day and, doing what he done. And I said to myself, I don't want to see that to myself. Yeah. I want to own my own shit. And having the kind of the business mentality that I already started having, I looked at what was lacking in my town. And I realized that there was a big need for small haulage, removal company. So I put a business plan together, and I presented it to the Prince Charles, his trust, Prince of Wales Trust, it's called.
Yeah.
And I was able to, obviously I'm cutting a long story short here, but I had a really in-depth business plan. And I was able to get a loan and a grant to start up my company, which was pretty much paying for the insurance and the truck.
Yeah.
And it was me and my van.
The name?
Lift and Shift.
Lift and Shift.
Shout out Lift and Shift. So I built that business up from one man in a van to then 13 employees at the end of it.
And some were your friends, or most were your friends, would you say? Yeah.
And what I had, the vision I had for this, and again, I know I'm going all over the place, but in my town, there was only kind of one or two moving companies, and they were very big moving trucks. Yeah. And these guys look like fucking slobs. They turn up at your house, and, and there was no uniform, and, it's a hard grafting job. So these guys would turn up in the clothes they wanted to get dirty in.
Right.
So when I realized that a lot of people were paying a lot of money just to have not even a quarter of that truck filled, it's like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to see, I seen this gap in the market, and I bought a truck which would be like the equivalent to a big U-Haul truck.
Okay, so like rent. 20 feet, 26 feet.
Yeah. And I kind of jumped into it. It was learn as I go. But I mean, I was training at the time. Actually, he's competing in the Welsh. I'd won the Welsh. I'd won the British. So not only was it a great marketing tool, the papers picked up in it. There's Flex Lewis, Mr. Wales, Mr. Britain. I'd won the universe also. Who would you want to turn up at your gym? These guys, all that worked out, clean-shaven uniforms, or somebody else? Also, as I said, the key thing to what I was doing was small haulage. Yeah. And coming from the town that I'm in, financially, a lot of these people just didn't have the money. So they would try to do it in cars. They'd try to move these furniture from places, or they would just have to sell it because they couldn't take it. So when I would charge per load. And that's why I was able to scale the business significantly so fast. So within 3 years, as I said, I'd won Young Businessman Year three times, and an award of Prince Charles. I had an award, a KEF scholarship, which is like a business, like a business group of people that got together. Yeah. And it was, even though at the time it was very strenuous and very hard, and I was also still competing.
Yeah, competing.
It was normality. Yeah. So when I hear, again, not going all over the place, when I hear people saying, oh, I feel so tired, and they're doing online coaching, shut the fuck up. Yeah. Like, I was moving 3 people a day.
In the rain.
Getting all my meals in, in the rain. And
cardio, training.
Dealing with all kinds of, hey, we want this on the 3rd floor. You know what? It's better on the 1st floor. Oh, put it on the 2nd floor. And it was all, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
You had to manage employees.
Yes.
And a payroll system. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just you doing the job and you relying on yourself. You had to deal with different personalities, making sure these people got up, they looked the way you wanted, they showed up, they were just as polite as you, to these customers. So, it's a lot. And you're what, 20?
Yeah,
19,
not even that. Probably like
19,
yeah,
20.
18, 19, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big undertaking.
It was. But again, just like when I came to the US, I knew I wasn't going to fail. It's a wild mentality I had and still have, where if I throw myself into it, even though shit was hitting the fans in some cases, not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but it's just like, wow, oh man, I'm so tired. But then when I would snap into it,
Yeah.
as soon as I'd pull up at the house, I went into business mode.
And not to stop you there, I think a key thing that I think we've learned about people that we've met in business, it doesn't matter what business you're in, it is about their mindset and who they are. You can teach people certain business practices, right? No one just is born knowing everything, right?
Yeah.
You either have to trial and error, or there's things you do have to learn from a book or another person. But I think you'll agree with me on this, truly believe that a personality, your internal drive and will, is innate. Like you're born with that. You could have the same parents, you could have, siblings, right? Mm-hmm. You're all raised the same, you're all given the same love, you were all given the same, intellect, school, education, everything, but you're all different people, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're all like chemically made up a little differently. Yeah. And I think that, you can agree that, no matter where you came from, mm-hmm. it's the drive or that mindset part of it is in you. It's just the way that you will look at it as the glass half full. And you can change that about yourself. Just say that, you don't feel like you're business savvy. But I do believe that it doesn't matter if you came from the silver spoon or not. It's that mindset that really allows you to say, I'm going to make this successful. I'm not going to complain about this. I'm just going to go. It's kind of like ignorance is bliss, too, in these situations.
Yeah,
because
that was true.
You didn't know what any of this was going to turn into. But all the things that I feel like you have done, there's a commonality of just, I'm going to do it, I'm going to succeed, and I'm going to know when to stop. I think that's key in business too, or in any decision that you do, is you have to know, all right, I've hit that glass ceiling, or I want to stop this and I can't scale anymore. I want to go into a different sector, take all mm-hmm. of what I learned and invest. And it's not financial investment, it's also investing your time, right? And the knowledge that you learned from the paper run went into the Pigeons, went into the moving company, and then went into bodybuilding, right? So that's where you are now in this story, is that you went from, you have your business as a haulage and a moving company, and now you're training at this point, and you have to make the decision.
That's exactly what happened, yeah. So I scaled my business significantly the same time as I was winning pretty much everything as an amateur and with Neil. So I was, and the only, the great thing was my van was, very identifiable. It was a white van with a lift and shift on the side of it. And it was my only car I had, truck. That was the only vehicle I had to my name. So when I drove around the town, I would go and see Neil, which was like an hour away. Like Neil could tell you some stories about me and my fucking driving that truck to him. That would cost me so much money in gas.
Yeah, and it's like an hour drive.
Yeah, and that thing was a gas guzzler. But it was just, like you go to Vegas Strip, you got them trucks that drive around with all the advertisements on it. That's what I was doing. Yeah. And I'd park my truck in a place that was great, free branding, whatever I went. But to pick up what we're saying, for me, the mentality of coming from really nothing and then being able to see something come from it, because nobody gave me any faith in starting that business. Nobody. Not one fucking person.
Well, except you got your grant, right?
Yeah,
so that was like.
But again, these people only knew what I was trying to do.
Right.
I'm talking about everybody around me. My mother, my father, they were all worrisome.
Yeah.
And they were all like, "Oh, I don't know," and I don't live like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of a mentality that I was kind of brought up in. My mother always was worried about the worst case scenario. It's like, fuck it. The worst case scenario happens, then I'll deal with it. But I was going to succeed. And when things started happening, all these, naysayers who didn't have any faith in me, not my mother and father, obviously, at this point in time, but they all were coming out the woodwork. Oh, we knew we could do it. But going back to us with the moving side of things, I learned a lot from that. I learned customer service, obviously, came from the paper round days too, but you're talking about a whole different thing. You're talking about now looking after people's pride prideful possessions, things that they've inherited, things that they've saved for.
Yeah.
And again, coming from my town, you know, these things are evident.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had the responsibility. And that's why the guys that I hired, you know, had a certain look, knew that they were capable of doing what they were doing. And they also, you know, outside of the business side of things, you know, they were their boys, you know.
Yeah.
But when they were on the site and we were working, not a swear word was done. Everybody had to turn up in uniform. And I remember, you know, seeing movies and kind of TV back there, or FedEx. And I just remember the FedEx trucks turning up clean. The uniforms were brown. And
not FedEx, UPS.
I'm sorry, UPS. I'm sorry. Yes, UPS. And I just remember thinking, that's how I want to turn up. That's what I want all my guys to come out looking the part.
Yeah.
Clean shaven, hair done. At the end of it all, we were covered in dust.
Yeah.
But how we turned up and how we spoke, I put advertisements out in the Yellow Pages. I put advertisements out in different things. Our biggest return was word of mouth.
Yep.
And when my mother became my secretary, and she would answer the phone, we had a split line in the house. So my mother would answer, hello, lift and shift. And one of the questions was, where did you find out about us? And everything was word of mouth.
That's awesome.
And that was amazing. That was a big badge of honor for myself.
Of course.
So from there on in, bodybuilding took off.
Yeah.
I had this opportunity to come to America. And of course, you know, the same kind of people that had worries about me starting up the business had the same worries about me going to the US.
It was another business venture. I mean, did you look at it like that, I guess? Let's take it back. You left Lift and Ship at this point and you were going to go to America to bodybuild. Did you at that moment, and I don't even know this answer to be honest, did you think, oh, I'm going to make this a business. Or I'm just going to be successful, meaning I'm going to win because that's what I've come to do, is to win. Because winning and making it a business not necessarily are the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So at that time, the answer could be like, I didn't know, right? I didn't know that it was ignorance is bliss maybe again, where like, I just want to win. I know how to win. I'm an athlete. Did you have that concept of, yes, this is going to be a new business venture, or that didn't come until like later?
So good question. I'm trying to take myself back in that time. I would say that me going to the US was more of a, wow, I'm coming to the US moment, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't me thinking about business because I was still coming home.
And you were young.
I was
you were
young. I was excited. I wanted to see these bodybuilders that were in the magazines that weren't real until I physically seen them with my own eyes. So I was caught up in the, you know, in the I don't know, the excitement of everything that was going on. So Ed Corners reached out to me after I won the British, and he invited me over to the US. And it took a couple of months for me to actually accept the invite because I didn't know who the fuck this guy was. Yeah. You know, no disrespect to Ed. Ed is amazing. No. I'm just saying, there was a random guy that emailed me and said, hey, I want to bring you out to the US. And I was like, who does this? Yeah. You know, but obviously everybody who knows Ed, everybody's got a story about Ed, you know, and how he kind of changed their life or whatever. And I ended up taking the invite, and he brought me over to the US, and I remember staying in his house and going to Gold's Gym, seeing these pros. My mind was blown, and I realized, like, wow, this is a completely different life, you know? This is this fucking sun in the sky. You wake up every day. It's like a great time. Yeah. But I still, at that point in time, didn't know where my future was, you know, if I was going to be putting all this stock into now, you know, bodybuilding in terms of the business side. I didn't know you could make money in bodybuilding. I was training, and I knew that playing rugby, I loved the camaraderie, the position I played, you know, you're either the glory guy or you don't get the ball. But one thing I could control the narrative of, it was getting a good workout in every single day. So even after rugby games, I would head to the gym, mud on my knees, and I'd still get a great workout in. And I loved that. I was like, but how can I make money from this? I can't make money from training with weights. It's just never thought about it. So then when that started kind of rolling in, and I realized you can make money from this, and then you start hearing, or you ask these guys who have contracts in the US that I became friendly with, you get told like numbers that just didn't seem real. You know, wait, so you get free supplements and you get paid? Yeah. I was like, so I was just happy to get free supplements. I was just, at that point in time, I was just happy to get a free tub of protein because that costs so much money. And I think a lot of these guys these days, you know, they don't appreciate, you know, the what a lot of the us guys that paved the way in the beginning had to do, you know, everything was free. But then when I realized that I could make something of it, was probably maybe a few years later, and it goes back to our last podcast. We were talking about Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
You know, and if you guys haven't seen that podcast, I think it's one of the best Jay Cutler podcasts that I've heard.
Yeah.
And even he said himself, you know, that was a podcast that he kind of opened up and talked about, right? So if you guys haven't heard that, seen that,
check it out.
Check it out. We talk about the business side of bodybuilding, and that was a pivotal part of that mindset change going back. So when I went back home to the UK after spending some time with Jay and seeing his house and seeing everything he accomplished through bodybuilding, that was the fucking light bulb for me. And I soon realized that, yes, I had all these contracts, and babe, I know you know this story, but I had opened up so many doors for myself in the world of removal. I had a contract with the NHS. I had a contract with the local council. They didn't do this.
Yeah.
I was the guy. Like, I was taking hospital beds from one hospital to the next.
Yeah.
And I had to invoice them. Yes, it would take a month to get, but I was getting paid very good money for that. And then all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, wow, I built this early empire in moving. Got my name out there. The phone was ringing every day. I was turning more work down that I could take. Yeah. To now follow this sport, come over to America and fucking sleep on the sofa. It was a very difficult transition, but I knew. I just knew I was going to make it. I don't know how or why, and I know I've talked about this prior, but I just felt I was not going to fail. And I can put myself in the shoes I'm in now and look back at that kid and think, fuck, he had some big balls. Yeah. Fucking big balls. It's not about stroking my ego here because I was a different kid. I had
it goes back to that ignorance is bliss. Because when you're younger, you don't, it's hindsight's 2020. You're sitting back looking at it as a 37-year-old who's done a lot, right? And you have like no fear at that age kind of either, right? Like you're about leaving your house, you know, at that time. You didn't have the stress of, or you didn't live on your own at that point. You didn't have all these life things that have gone on in the past, 18 years to be like, oh my God, I don't know if I would do that. But you probably would because that's who you are. But yes, you look back and you think of that kid and you're like, wow, he had like zero fear. Yeah, there was no regrets. It was like, I'm going to do this. And I think part of it is because, like you said, it's like if it doesn't work,
I could go back.
It doesn't work. Right.
And that was the first time moving out of the house too. I was still living with my mum and dad. So I literally jumped out of the nest and had to fend for myself, the money that I saved and saved and saved. And I sold all my business, anything to do with the business. I sold the truck. I sold everything. Yeah. I lived on, and I really, I made that dollar stretch. Yeah. But I also knew the value of a dollar too. So I wasn't there, I wasn't in the US to be a tourist. Yeah. I was here to make something because I knew what I was sacrificing back home. I had this. I spent years to get to the point that I ended up leaving, and it was madness to a lot of people. Yeah. But I was like, I don't know. This is what I love. I love to train, and I feel like I can really make this work. So when I came out to the States to pick up in the story, I bounced around a little bit. We won't go into the whole ins and outs of there, but slowly but surely I started seeing progression, and at first there was nothing, but I homed in on the small stuff. Like I was training at Venice Beach in the Gold's Gym, and the gym was dead. There was not a single top pro there, and I was like, I fucking moved everything to come to this gym. And there's nobody here. There was no motivation. Like I'd walk in there and there was a couple of old school guys that were still there. Yeah. Chris Cormier was retired, so he wasn't really training like he used to. And it was the local faces, Tito Raymond and stuff like this. But that's not what I want. Moved all the way across and left my family to be around. And then I started hearing these whispers about this gym in Orange County, Coliseum Gym. Yeah. And shout out to Milos Sachev. I went up there. I met Milos. He was incredible. Well, he knew so much about me when I got there. I was shocked.
Because of Ed, you think?
No, because
he just did his own.
Milos is just a fan of the sport.
Yeah.
And I don't know, imagine seeing this guy in a magazine that you've kind of grown up looking at, and then you get to meet him, and he was more than I could have imagined, you know. Obviously, he's full circle now. He trains at the gym here, and we've got a personal relationship. But at that point in time, you know, he's like, you need to be at this gym. And I was staying with Scott in a beautiful house, you know, in Santa Monica, periodically, not full time. But then he was like, you need to be up in this gym, and I knew. And I got friendly with Everett. Lacrosse, shout out Everett. He said to me, listen, I don't have a bed, but I have a sofa. And I totally abused my stay with him. Stole a lot of his chicken breasts, but he was an incredible friend during that time. But I was there at the gym every single day.
You showed up.
I showed up. And what I realized soon enough was some of these guys with these big contracts were so disrespectful to the sponsors. They were turning up, not in shape.
Yeah.
Chris Lund was shooting, and I just hung around. And I said, listen, I'm in shape. I kept myself in shape. And I introduced myself to Chris Lund. He knew I was the Welsh guy. And I said, if there's ever an opportunity, I'll jump in. So imagine, the day came. This pro turns up, not in shape, not naming names, but he was a water buffalo. Chris had set up this whole photo shoot, and he was so pissed. He was so pissed, and he was very vocal. And, you know, Chris with his English accent, yeah, fucking this and that, you fat fuck. He's shouting at these pros. And I said, can I jump in? I'm in shape. And, you know, I was covered up too. And when he seen that I was in shape, we'd done some great test shots, and we'd done some, it was kind of then, all right. So then I became that kid in the gym. They didn't know my name. Chris could never remember my name, even though it's fucking Flex. He would be the Welsh kid. It's the Welsh kid, yeah. So being and keeping myself in shape, business mentality, this is where the business aspect comes in. I soon created the momentum.
Yeah.
I knew my place. Every day there was a top pro coming into that gym.
Yeah.
And of course, I was Flex, right? But there was only supposed to be only one Flex. And it was very difficult for me to be told, you know, no, there's only one Flex. And I remember having a conversation with my mother, and she said, you've been called Flex since you were 6 years old. That's who you are. That's your name. If they don't like it, fuck them. And I was like, Mom, wow. You know what my mother's like.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay. So hearing that from my mother, I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
And then I kind of proved that name by work ethic.
Yeah.
Milos would have these guys come in, Troy Alves, Chris Dim, Dennis Wolf, Dennis James, big names would come in, and these guys would come straight off the plane. And Milos was like, so-and-so needs to train legs today. Oh, I trained legs yesterday. I understand. So-and-so needs to train legs today. You're training with him. So I earned my respect through sweat equity.
Yeah. And showing up. And I was always told that, you know, it's like 80% is showing up. Yeah. It's just literally showing up, and that doesn't mean physically, but it's showing up for yourself. It's showing up for the job. It's showing up to do the work, you know, and the skill, the talent, and everything else is that other 20%. And I just by the literal fact of you just being there and showing up then in shape, you know, it opened these doors, and it really progressed your career. At that moment. That's probably that's when you realized. Well,
I put myself in the situation to be there around the top guys, right? And I started really seeing what these guys looked like in the flesh. And I started training, keeping up toe to toe with these guys. Physically, I didn't look like them, but they knew when these guys came in town, I became friends with them. Hey, Flex, I'm training today. You want to hit a chest session? So I got the respect from these guys. Now, you know, it wasn't I don't know if they got to know me through a message board, or like back in the day that was big, right? Yeah. Or a magazine, small little clip. It was, I earned the respect through training and putting in that work, turning up, as you said. And over time, you know, Flex, that whole conversation about, you know, there was only one Flex disappeared.
Yeah.
And I earned my name. Yeah. You know, and that was my name, and this is my name. You know, if you call me James, I don't bat an eyelid. Somebody else calls me James, it doesn't you know,
you don't
compute.
Hear it.
I don't hear it.
I
just don't. And, so again, the business aspect of things soon followed. I realized me putting myself in that gym at that time, sponsors came in, Every day there's a photo shoot. So when there was a photo shoot, the top guys in the top managers were there for the companies. They were turning up. Me training around these guys, they were talking about me. So there was a lot of referral. Yeah. I created my own hype. And I remember there was also things that weren't going right. Money was not good. And every time I spoke to my mum back home or my dad back home, everything was positive. Everything. Because
everything you said to them was positive. Right?
Everything. Because even though it wasn't, I had to tell them what was going on. Even if it was
the littlest,
fucking 10 horrible things that were going, I had to home in on that one thing to tell my mother so she didn't get worried. You know, because the standard reply was, oh, you know, you've done it now, come back home, you know, and, you know, listen, I was missing my mother's cooking. I was missing my friends. I had a rolling index of everything. Yeah. The business I left. And, you know, I was broke. I was living on my savings, but I turned up. I knew it was going to work. And then I had my moment. I had that call from Peter McGough in a supermarket that kind of changed my life. And I was really on, just like the Rock story, I was really on my last dollars. Yeah. It was the timing. The timing couldn't have been any better. I think it was God, you know, putting this opportunity in front of me. And, you know, I was offered a contract with Weeder Publications. Yeah. And then I had my first ever paid contract, which was a company called K&S, which was a company Milos was involved with. And it allowed me then to get my first rental property, you know, condo, not condo, small apartment. I mean, fucking hell, not bougie. Yeah. But it also allowed me to eat, afford food. Yeah. And it was a life changer. I felt like fucking made it. Yeah. Even though I look back, it was nothing. It was not that much money at all. But
it was more than you came with.
It was so much money for me back then that I was, wow, I'm on the ladder. And this is level 1.
But what it was kind of like validating, okay, I'm in the right place at the right time because something happened. And it wasn't just a small thing. It was a big thing, right? You were able to get from that couch to have your own couch, you know, in your own apartment. So, well, I don't know if you had a couch in there, either way, metaphorically speaking, you know, you were able to see like real progression, you know? And so I think that to you is like, okay, you know what? I'm going to continue with my belief system of I'm not going to fail because you got that sign, right? You got that call, you got the contract, you got your own place. Yeah. Things were moving, maybe not as fast as you would want, but either way they moved. And they moved to obviously a lot of places from there. Yeah. But I mean, that's one hell of a story, and it's all really, you know, from a paper round.
Yeah, and it's not, as you know, it's a very long story short. I've kind of just hit cliff notes. Yeah. Because there's so many small stories entwined in everything we've mentioned. We could be here all day, but I kind of just keeping everything in terms of business. When I had my first paycheck, I invested that money into me. Yeah. I was the product. So then I realized soon enough that if I wanted to level up, I had to, you know, invest in me, the product.
Yeah, of course.
And from there, when I started getting more momentum and I got more sponsors that came on over some time, I started investing into other endeavors. My first ever US business was in a gym called FAC, Franklin Athletic Club. And that was a smoothie bar. Yep. And the name of that smoothie bar, again, with me and my names, it was called Flex and Shake.
Flex and Shake. We have the shirt, actually, still.
Flex and Shake. Yeah. And it done very well. You know, I was with Gaspar Nutrition at that time. You know, I had a great contract with Rich. I was traveling around the world. But I also needed to put myself into a business. And I needed to have something that was mine. And then I soon employed people, and the smoothie bar took off, you know. And as of recently, one of my friends has just purchased that building, you know, Brent Laffey, and turned it into the gym. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be a very good gym there in Franklin Athletic Club in Tennessee. But that smoothie bar area is still there. And he was showing me a video the other day, and it brought a lot of memories back. You know, it was a lot of fun. The business was one where I had to turn up every morning to open up the shop, get all the stock, and, you know, and I was still trying to get on the ladder of being a pro. It was the 202 days. I had won my first pro show. I'd won the Europa Pro Show as a 202.
So 2008.
Yeah, and I took that money and I reinvested it into the smoothie bar, brought more machinery, these fancy gadgets and gizmos.
Yeah.
And Franklin, Tennessee is a very affluent area.
Yeah.
A lot of singer-songwriters would live there. A lot of celebrities would be living there as a secondary home. So I had guys like Garth Brooks. I had, who was he married to? Garth Brooks.
Faith Hill?
I don't know. No, I don't know. Anyway, he was.
It's not my world.
I had Britney Spears was one of my customers. I had Britney Spears' sister. I had a load of country singers, which I have no bloody clue who they were, but they were all humble and so nice.
Yeah.
Even when I met Garth Brooks, he came up to me. He knew I didn't know who he was. We had a little conversation. Every morning I'd speak to him.
Yeah.
And, we chit-chat. And one time he was leaving the gym and he took some photos of somebody. I was like, who the hell is that guy? I was like, because these people came in, they was like, oh my God, and they're tripping out. And I said, who's that? And they told me. I was like, oh yeah. So I texted my mother. I said, Mom, you ever heard of this guy, Garth Brooks? I should know, right? And she was like, oh my God. How she
So
is.
funny.
So, but again, just living in Tennessee, very humble again. And I was able to grow this business to the point where I had options to open others, which I did. But then, life happens, makeups, breakups, and I decided then to move to another part of Tennessee, and that's really where then I kind of my bodybuilding scaled up.
Yeah.
I was single. I focused nothing but myself. I was able to eat, sleep, train like a bodybuilder, put really emphasis into resting, which I never did. And I obviously then started traveling the world because Gaspari had me traveling. I was traveling 26 weeks of the year at that point in time. So a business was very hard. I couldn't handle it. And when you're in a business that's involving cash, which is the majority of what I was taking in, it was very difficult to manage on the road. So I just focused on the bodybuilding aspect of things and
turned that into a business.
And turned that into a business. So then fast forward, Tennessee, I met this chick, hot little mama. And
we don't need to go. That's a whole other podcast.
But I'll say this. We got together. I was going through a nasty breakup, it was the final stages of everything. And I met you. And you realized soon that I was doing a lot of things ass backwards. My merchandise was my brand was my brand was starting to scale.
Yep.
I started to sell merchandise. I started selling DVDs. I started filming myself more, and I started doing a lot of things and looking at Jay Cutler as a perfect example, and trying to see what he was doing, and from a very small level, try to emulate what he was doing.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, I was doing things so archaic. And when you and I met together, you were kind of very impressed, I guess, what I was doing. But then you soon realized, like, you're doing this so ass backwards. So
yeah, that's true. We did
take yourself back in meeting me. And
yeah, well, we changed a lot from that point. But even down to where you source your hats, how much it costs to get it embroidered, and then how we were shipping, and then Shopify came along, and then talking about you need to do the eat, sleep, and train thing, and all you should do is come home and sign the photos someone wants. You shouldn't be packaging it. And so I started helping with that. And then as time went on, I'm cutting a lot of things short, but, we brought someone on to help us with that, because then I was more useful doing something else, and I was also in grad school. So there's a lot of things. I think that's a whole podcast too, of how we looked at situations to be like, we're not doing this right, or, how can we do it? That. Yeah, how can we do it better? But ultimately, you've kind of realized, I think, at one point, I can make bodybuilding a business, when it was getting away from Flex and Shake, and you were with Gaspari, and you really kind of utilized that role more than just an athlete who needed to show up and have the supplements and promote. You took advantage of being able to travel with Rich and those meetings and listen, full circle, you still know all those people, all the store owners, so it's true. You realized in your head, I'm going to make this a business. In order to make it a business, it's not me just being the athlete, right? Because there's only a certain shelf life of you being an athlete. And whether you knew it at the time, you were obviously took all the skills you had from all your past businesses with the customer service, showing up and being respectful and showing up in shape. All those aspects kind of just went into bodybuilding, and all those stores that you went made appearances at, all the vendors, anything that you were doing, all the fans, it all kind of comes full circle, and that's how you made bodybuilding a business. You know, you took it from all those other businesses and that you kind of grew up doing, whether you knew it or not, right? It's instilled in you. It was part of you. It was like second nature. You didn't have to teach yourself to be kind or how to talk to people. Like you just knew, right? So it's just interesting because that is the progression of how you've made, you know, your passion at the time being bodybuilding or training into a business. So, I mean, kudos to you because that's not easy. You didn't, you know, not that it had to be easy, but, you know, moving from a different country is a big deal, especially during a time where there was no social media, like phones were just coming out. I mean, it's a scary thing when you really look back. That's like a big leap of faith that you were doing with very little communication back home. Like now people have it somewhat easy to be able to leave and always see, right?
Yeah.
There's FaceTime, there's Skype, there's all these things that you can like have connections. There's very little connection, you know? And so maybe that was the best thing at the time for who you were is not to be super connected and just be like, I had to make it work. I had to hustle. But I mean, that's one hell of a story when you really think about it.
Yeah, you mentioned Rich, right? Yeah, first of all, I appreciate that. But Rich was traveling with Rich taught me a lot too.
Oh yeah, that I know.
I don't want to jump over that part because Rich became like a little, you know, a really good big brother to me.
Yeah.
And
we need to get him on.
Going around the world. Yeah, he can tell you some stories about us on the road. Going around the world with him, you know, Germany, India, freaking all over Europe, all over the US.
Yeah.
He never left me out of any business meeting. He let me sit in them and listen and learn. And I'd ask him questions, you know. I'd hear these big deals that were going down, you know, 4-1s and stuff like that. That means buy 4 product, get 1 free. You know, they would hustle a deal where if they bought X amount of stuff, they would get X amount of shirts free or shaker cups. And it was a great learning system. I felt like I had an apprenticeship.
Oh, you did?
I did. And being around and having that kind of mindset of business, I loved asking and talking. And again, because Rich is self-made too, he comes from nothing. And he created Gaspari. And at that time, Gaspari was like...
blowing up.
He was, you know, putting a lot of pressure on BSN.
Yeah.
That it was amazing upbringing. Amazing business upbringing. So learning all that as I did from Rich, and then transitioning into the bodybuilding side of things, I would take all my merchandise on the road. I would sell it. Different countries would, you know, I would go with 2 full suitcases.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I know.
I'd pack that.
Yeah, and I'd come back with 2 empty suitcases. Obviously, 3 cases, 1 personal, 2 business, and I'd come back with nothing but cash.
Yeah.
And it was a great time, but, you know, it was very hard too because you were running on basically no sleep. Plus, I was having to train. And then 8 weeks before the show, I had to win or try to win in Olympia. And it was very difficult. But anyway, we can speak about all these stories again. But in terms of then us getting together, there was an opportunity to sign with BSN. You know, I was with Rich for 7 years, and you know, not going into the whole business ins and outs. You know, unfortunately, we just couldn't.
It's what it is. Not to cut you off. It's knowing when to stop. And it's the same concept of you stopping the paper rounds, to the birds, to the moving, to, you know, bodybuilding. You have to know your worth, first of all. This is a whole other podcast, but knowing your worth and your value, and not saying you weren't valued at all, because you were extremely valued at Gaspari.
Yeah.
But it's knowing when it's time for the next chapter. And that's very hard for someone who, in your situation, had such a great relationship with Rich. Nothing bad happened between you two. He's taught you so much. That's why also you stay sometimes in a situation because of your loyalty, right? And how much you've learned. And it's also comfortable, right? Yeah. Like, we're not going to beat around that bush. But yeah, it was hard for you at that time, and I'll just say this, to make that decision. Yeah. I definitely had to come in as an outsider and been like, okay, yeah, that's great and all. I know he's done so much for you. But if you need a scale,
but it wasn't Rich.
Business, no. But leaving the company, the brand, right, that you grew up with in your bodybuilding career, grew up with, to scale you as a business of bodybuilding. That is a whole other topic. But you have to know when to do that, and you know, it is a science. There's no formula, right? Sometimes you make the wrong decision, which we've all done before. But I think that was hard for you, and I think I came into, and it was a lot easier for me because I had no emotions into that. My stock was in you and you to be successful. That's what it was, and I didn't have that emotional tie.
No, and they couldn't buy you either.
No.
But we won't get into the whole details.
No,
but I stayed loyal for
long time,
more years than I
most would have ever done.
And it's not me saying anything bad about Rich, but even Rich will attest to this. If he was to turn the clock back, he would have handled it a lot differently, because I was dealing with somebody that was hired that didn't even train.
Yeah,
it was a fucking mess that ruined my relationship with Gaspari.
Yeah.
And, he was not a good egg for Gaspari, and they got rid of him after that. But
everything happens for
a reason.
Yeah.
And the key thing is I want to note was BSN came to me and offered this fucking number to me, and I was very hesitant. I went to beat Gaspari. They thought it was fabricated. Or this guy thought it was fabricated. And I was like, no, this is real. So I went back to BSN. I said, it's got to be life-changing. And then they presented me a very life-changing number. But they bought the racehorse, and that's what I want to make sure everybody knows. They purchased a guy who was at the top of the tree.
Who was winning already.
Who was winning.
Yeah.
And, they wanted that guy. And I can step back and see that as a business endeavor. And, the offer was life-changing, and it was able then to allow me to see the money that came in and invest. And we started up the Dragon's Lair. A lot of people don't know this, but we lost money every single month having that Dragon's Lair. Short term. The money that we put out to rent, to purchase all the equipment, to run this facility, was a lot of money. If I told the number that it cost, we won't talk the number, but it was 9,000 square feet of gym in Boca Raton, Florida. Boca Raton, Florida.
But that is definitely another podcast, talking about how the transition, you really started being, the bodybuilding was a business, BSN contract, Dragon's Lair Gym, and all those decisions to get us to now this Dragon's Lair Gym.
Definitely another podcast.
Yeah.
But keeping it business, and on the topic of going through the storyline in Cliff Notes, I was able then to create this gym that I invested in. And obviously Arsenal Strength was still in the promiscuous stage. Obviously I've just completely jumped over Arsenal Strength as a business endeavor.
No, you're 2014 at this point.
Yeah.
And then Arsenal was around the same time, 2014. Yeah.
So when we opened up the Dragon's Lair, it was all used gym pieces, Shout out to Stephen at Super Fitness. He helped us, set up
and
that
Brad
gym.
Holt.
Brad Holt, amazing.
Yeah.
And Brad Holt wasn't working for us then at the Arsenal Strength.
No.
He was Life Fitness,
That's another podcast. Arsenal.
But we was able to create the Dragon's Lair, and obviously through the ripples of the fitness industry, people want what they can't get. Being as the Dragon's Lair was closed to the public and seeing all these celebrities turning up and training and doing camp, we were able to then evolve. And we evolved several times with the Dragon's Lair to it being then a fully functioning Arsenal Strength facility at the very end. And again, it was all investing. And, as I said, we lost money every single month for 7 years putting that on, but I didn't, because I was able to
win Olympics.
Win and defend. Win, defend. Several times. Yeah. So that, even though financial, monetary side of things was a loss, what really wasn't. It was kind of more of an investment.
Yeah.
So it's all how you look at it. It's all speculative, right? If I was to tell somebody that wasn't business savvy how much money I was investing in this product, and then what the return was, you'd be like, that's a bad investment, but it wasn't. I was investing in me. I was investing in the ability to progress. I was investing in the people who were coming and using the gym, the celebrities, the networking, the relationships. So yes, it paid itself off tenfold, because then what happened was we created this, I say this many times, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory kind of appeal, where the only way you could get into the gym was with a golden ticket.
Right.
So everybody wanted to get into the gym. Yeah. So fast forward to the tail end of us staying in Florida, we ended, I know I've said this in the previous podcast, but we looked at other places and it doesn't feel like home. So full circle, opening up the Dragon's Lair here in Las Vegas was the best decision we've done. We're able now to see athletes go full circle and create opportunities that were given to me through other gyms like Milos' gym.
Yeah, for sure.
And now see guys who are in the infancy stage of their
Career,
pro show, their career, and really support them, give back. We have an amazing culture here at the gym.
Yep.
You just have to see, like today now we had some top NFL guys here. We had top NBA guys here. And that was just this morning, you know. God knows who's at the gym right now. But every day there's people turning up that are at the best of their, you know, at the top of their craft. And wanted to use this facility because through word of mouth, they know that they're going to get the workout that they want whilst in Vegas. So again, we have invested into many different things now being here in Vegas. We've started up 4 or 5 different businesses, some in the infancy stage, some are already moving. We've created this podcast, which I said I would never do. And here I am talking on the fucking podcast. And we're now employing, you know. Total, we have probably, in all the business endeavors we're involved with, we have about 230 employees.
Yeah.
That's about right, like 220 something with Arsenal Strength and with the gyms and everything else, and soon to be more. You know, so we're creating, you know, opportunities for other people now to get involved. And, you know, it's a great story that is still continually being told. You know, I can tell anybody that we ask of them to do that I can do. I'll do it myself, and I've done it myself.
Well, right.
I've come here. I am not a pot to piss in. I had a dream. I had to go for it. I had many times that I doubted myself, but I had to shake it off and go, no, this is going to work.
Yeah.
You know, so when I come across all these athletes that tell their stories, that come in from all over the country and all over the world and now calling this gym their home and are chasing that dream, you know, I can say, just don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up. And in that pursuit of them chasing this goal and this dream, whatever it is, whatever division they want to compete in or whatever sport they're in, you learn so much about yourself by going through failure.
Yeah.
And I can tell so many stories about times where I've gone through failure and I've dusted myself off and I've got back up and I fucking learned something from that time. Even though when I was going through it, it was like, why me and all that bullshit.
Yeah, of course.
But you learn, you listen, you ask, you surround yourself with like-mindedness. You know, if you want to be the best, you surround yourself by the best. And this is one of the reasons people fucking train here.
Yeah.
Is because you want to walk into a gym and there's greatness around you, whether it's in bodybuilding, whether it's in fucking football, whether it's whatever it is, whatever sport, business, you're around, you know, like-mindedness, and iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
So every day when I walk into this gym, I see stories. I see stories, you know, yes, they're faces, but I see stories. Everybody has their story.
Of course.
And it's how you end up telling that story at the end of the day. You know, my grandfather passed away, right? And he had a hell of a story.
Yeah.
He lived hell of a life. And was I upset back home? Yes. You know, it's hard for me to get emotional, but that guy was, you know, somebody that was like a very, well, it's a massive part of my upbringing. Yeah. But he had a story. And one thing I learned about my grandfather is that he worked harder, just like my dad, than any person I know. And I just didn't want to fall into that category of busting my ass for fucking nothing.
Yeah.
I've busted my ass to create something so my daughter doesn't have to do what I've had to go through. I want her to fail too, so she learns. You know, and when Maxon's older, the same thing. But we also teach her the moral integrity of life, you know. And again, you know, you have your story, I have my story. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm first generation.
Yeah.
I will be that story when my daughter's kids talk about me.
Yeah.
And when Maxon's kids talk about me, you know, obviously you know your own story. But I am that guy, you know. Everybody can always, that's lived in America, can always relate about my great-grandfather, you know, came here off the boat. Well, that's fucking me.
Yeah.
I am that first generation.
That is true.
And that prides me to be that guy, because I want to make sure that I make such a mark in the life for the generations that come after me, that they talk of me and say what most people do. It's like, oh, my grandfather came here, my grandmother came here, and they worked so hard, and they made a success for my father or whatever it would be. And that's something that I pride myself on. I've got to leave a mark, and I've got to do things morally right, and have people talk about me long after I'm done in this fucking spinning rock.
Well, your story is inspiring to everyone, and I know that your fans know maybe part of this, all of this. I think someone would learn a lot from just hearing your story, and it's a great one. It's impressive, and you have a very strong mindset, and it carries on to anything you're going to do next. It doesn't leave you. You just need to know when to scale, and you've done it, and you've done a hell of a job to get to where you are today.
Thanks, babe. Well, I think there was a pivotal part when I met you too. So, I was doing everything as my own, and on my own. And then I meet you, and then you kind of, scaled me up to that next level. And obviously, if you're looking at stats, I'm undefeated. You and I met. You kind of changed my mindset and allowed me to kind of focus more on my craft and help me on the back end of stuff. And obviously the proof is in the pudding, right? Yeah. And now we've retired from the sport. We've got several businesses. We have, 200 and something employees. We've got
2 children.
2 children. And obviously we're very blessed that our parents are still on this earth, and we're able to now to spend time with them and look after them, but yet we're still incredibly driven and looking for opportunities that will be passed on to our kids.
Exactly.
And I don't know if we covered enough business aspect of you. It feels like I turned into a fucking story about Flex here.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be. It's good.
But there's a lot more stuff, as you guys know, and we really appreciate, the comments that were done on the last post. It was kind of mind-blowing to read some of this stuff. Obviously, we said if you like this style of podcast, we'll do another. And then we had all them comments that I read, and I was like, wow. So I guess we're doing this.
Yeah.
So here we are. And all I have to say to you guys and girls that I watch this, I really appreciate all the support. Look down the camera and say this. Yeah. All the support you guys have given us as a family, me as a bodybuilder, Flex Lewis, and all the stories I love to hear when you guys come in to the gym and talk. And as you guys know, I love to talk. So do us a favor, comment below. Make sure you subscribe, like the post, all that shenanigans, and tell us what you want to hear on the next podcast. Maybe it's more in-depth things from the stories that we've talked about today. Maybe it's more of a specific topic, Yeah. And we're very excited to do this, and we're very happy to do this, and we both, more than anything else, are really enjoying it too.
Yes, we are. More time together.
Yeah. Fortunately for me, unfortunately for you.
No.
Anyways.
Never.
With that being said, guys, is there anything else you want to end on?
No. I think you said it all, and I like this podcast.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys. She likes this because she likes hearing her voice in this mic.
That's partly true.
Well, from us guys here at the Dragon's Lair, this is episode 8. Straight Outta The Lair. Out.